Good evening from the State of Kuwait. Welcome to the 7 o'clock news for Friday, the 12th of September 2014. I am Dalia Badran with the headlines for tonight. His Highness the Emir, Sheikh Sabah Al-Ahmad Al-Jaber Al-Sabah, returns to the homeland after the private visit to Morocco. His Highness the Emir, Sheikh Sabah Al-Ahmad Al-Jaber Al-Sabah, addresses the nation. U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry arrives in Turkey to build support for action against the IS militants in Syria and Iraq. New EU sanctions against Russia over its role in Ukraine go into force, with similar sanctions expected from the U.S. Hello and welcome. His Highness the Emir, Sheikh Sabah Al-Ahmad Al-Jaber Al-Sabah, and the accompanying official delegation is due to arrive in the country this evening following a private visit to the Kingdom of Morocco. His Highness the Emir, Sheikh Sabah Al-Ahmad Al-Jaber Al-Sabah, accompanied by the Deputy Chief of the National Guard, Sheikh Mish'al Al-Ahmad Al-Jaber Al-Sabah, left the Kingdom of Morocco following a private visit to the kingdom. His Highness the Emir was seen off at the Rabat International Airport by its governor, Abdul Wafi Laftit, Sheikh Mubarak Jaber Al-Ahmad Al-Sabah, and the ambassador of the State of Kuwait to Morocco, Shamlan Abdulaziz Al-Rumi. His Highness the Emir, Sheikh Sabah Al-Ahmad Al-Jaber Al-Sabah, will deliver a speech addressing the nation at 8 p.m. local time. The Secretary General of the Cooperation Council for the Arab States of the Gulf organized its fourth youth workshop this Wednesday and Thursday, September 10th and 11th, entitled The Gulf Cooperation Council and the GCC Citizenship. The two-day workshop, held right here in Kuwait, is under the patronage of the Minister of Information and the Minister of State for Youth Affairs, His Excellency Sheikh Salman Sabah Al-Salim Al-Hmoud Al-Sabah, and in presence of the Secretary General of the Gulf Cooperation Council, His Excellency Dr. Abdul Latif bin Rashid Al-Zayani. Our correspondent Badriya Al-Saleh was there and brings us this report.
The Gulf Cooperation Council and GCC Citizenship Workshop was attended by a number of ministers and diplomats, both from Kuwait as well as other GCC countries, and saw nearly 200 young men and women from each state attend and participate. This year marks the fourth youth workshop organized by the Secretariat General of the Cooperation Council for the Arab States of the Gulf, and the opening was attended by Minister of Information and Minister of State for Youth Affairs, Sheikh Salman Sabah Al-Salim Al-Hmoud Al-Sabah, as well as Secretary General of the GCC, His Excellency Dr. Abdul Latif bin Rashid Al-Zayani.
I thank Their Majesties and Their Highnesses, the heads of GCC member states, for their support of youth and for launching these workshops, which have already proven their value as they brought together young people from all the GCC member states to discuss the future of the GCC and GCC citizenship.
The workshop aims to encourage young people to promote the spirit of a joint GCC citizenship, hoping that through collaboration and the efforts of a unified GCC state, that the joint citizenship will ensure safe and stable living for all GCC citizens now and in the future.
This workshop is part of a series of workshops that come under directives from GCC leaders to hold continuous meetings for GCC youth, including these workshops, to meet the aspirations of our youth and their view of Gulf cooperation action and ways of further improving it. GCC citizenship is vital for Gulf cooperation action, and as I said, the GCC Economic Treaty was originally signed to achieve GCC citizenship.
We're here today to celebrate the opening of a series of workshops put together by the High Council in the Gulf, in the GCC, we are looking forward to seeing implementation on a number of different fronts. First and foremost, on the economic front, we're looking forward to seeing a number of initiatives taking place here as a stepping stone to further implementation and further legislation concerning issues to do with national identity. In addition, we look forward to seeing a myriad of different programs taking shape in the arts, in the sciences, and in new industries. This is something that we hope will revolutionize the way we look at youth involvement in the GCC as a whole. This isn't something new. They have been doing it now for the last few years. However, we see that the amount of people, young men and women participating in these workshops will allow us to look into further developing these kinds of workshops on a larger scale in the near future, hope.
Discussions focused on three main topics: the concept of citizenship, GCC citizenship and related fundamental values, as well as the necessary policies and rules needed to bestow citizenship. At the end of the workshop, recommendations and follow-ups will be submitted to the Council of Ministry before it's presented to the Supreme Council at the next summit. At Crown Plaza Hotel, I'm Badriya Saleh, reporting for the English News.
Thank you, Badriya. French President François Hollande expressed his solidarity with Iraq on a visit to Baghdad today as his country prepares for possible airstrikes with a U.S.-led coalition against extremists who have seized territory around the region. Hollande's trip and the conference that Paris is hosting Monday on Iraq are the first steps in a long-term effort to bolster the new Iraqi government and weaken the IS militants. It's also Hollande's first visit to the country since the IS fighters overrun large swathes of northern and western Iraq, along with the territory the militant group had already seized in Syria. Hollande is expected to discuss possible French airstrikes with Iraqi authorities during his visit. France is likely to start strikes very soon in coordination with the United States if the Iraqi government requested such action, but will not send ground troops. U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry has arrived in Turkey to seek support for more military action against the Islamic State fighters in Iraq and Syria. It comes after Turkey refused to allow the use of its southern air bases to launch attacks on the group. Kerry will try to secure more cooperation from the Turkish government in meetings with President Recep Tayyip Erdogan and Prime Minister Ahmed Davutoglu. U.S. President Barack Obama unveiled plans this week to expand its campaign against the IS militants in the region. 10 Arab nations have agreed to help the U.S. in its fight against the group, which the CIA said may have up to 31,000 fighters on the ground. The Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas said he will go through the Arab-backed political plan to end the Israeli occupation, otherwise turn to the International Criminal Court. Fatima Abdul Karim has more in this report.
The Palestinian leadership met late last night and reiterated the commitment to follow through the Arab-backed plan to turn to the UN for a resolution to end the Israeli occupation on territories occupied in 1967, regardless of the pressures and threats, Abbas said. He added that the goal is to establish the Palestinian state on the borders of 1967, with East Jerusalem as its capital.
This attempt is the final attempt that is decisive, and if the international community fails actually to bear its responsibility, the response from the Palestinian side will be to go to the utmost possible measures in order to isolate, to put the Israelis to international justice.
The meeting discussed the latest developments with regards to the Egyptian brokered talks, the reconstruction of Gaza, and the efforts to forward the political plan at the UN, including the talks with the US on a 9-month time frame for negotiations with Israel to define the borders of the Palestinian state. Most political factions warn that if Israel fails the political process this time, the Palestinians should head to the International Criminal Court.
The atmosphere after Gaza war was going this direction, that after this war we need a solution, we need a way out. Then President Abbas proposed this long peace process of 9 months negotiation and Israeli withdrawal in 3 years. But of course the Americans cannot do that.
In addition, the Palestinian leadership also echoed another national call to strengthen the national unity government, with its main priorities being the reconstruction of Gaza and the consolidation of the ceasefire. Fatma Abdelkarim, Kuwait TV, Ramallah, Palestine.
Thank you, Fatma. The United Nations welcomed the release of 45 of its peacekeepers after they had been taken by fighters in the Syrian Golan Heights. The Syrian rebels released all 45 Fijian peacekeepers who they had held captive for 2 weeks, bringing an end to a crisis that gripped the UN monitoring force in the chaos of Syria's civil war. A 1,200-strong UN force patrols the buffer zone between Syria and Israel. Speaking in Suva early today, Fiji's Prime Minister said his troops' discipline ensured that no rebels were killed and no UN soldiers harmed. New EU sanctions against Russia today went into force, blocking loans for 5 big state banks and curbing EU business with oil and defense firms. The aim is to keep pressure on Russia over its role in the Ukraine crisis, but the measures could be eased or lifted if a ceasefire in Ukraine holds. The United States was also expected to announce more sanctions today. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov accused the EU of undermining the peace process by taking such move. Meanwhile, the Ukraine crisis and world security both came under discussion today at the Yalta European Strategy Annual Meeting, which is being held in Kiev. European Parliament President Martin Schulz met with Ukraine President prior to the summit and reaffirmed Europe's position against Russia's action in Ukraine. Pakistani and Indian officials said the death toll from current flooding had reached 464 in the two countries. A disaster management spokeswoman said 3 more people died in Punjab today, bringing Pakistan's death toll from the floods to 264, while 200 people have died in India. Pakistan's military expanded its rescue and relief operations today as floodwaters hit more districts in the country's Punjab province. In the Indian-administered part of Kashmir, army and private doctors have set up scores of roadside hospitals and camps to treat flood victims. While the floodwaters have begun to recede in parts of the region, the threat of waterborne diseases like cholera and diarrhea is beginning to rise. A South African judge today found Oscar Pistorius guilty of culpable homicide in the shooting death of girlfriend Riva Steenkamp and declared him not guilty of murder and premeditated murder. The judge said today that the double-amputated athlete was not guilty of murder, as prosecutors had alleged. The sentence for culpable homicide conviction is at the judge's discretion, and it can range from a suspended sentence and a fine to up to 15 years in prison. Sentencing was to be announced at a later date. Pistorius was also convicted on one of 3 unrelated firearm charges. On the occasion of the completion of the national project that is entitled Future Makers, the Kuwait Chamber of Commerce and Industry, or the KCCI, hosted an award ceremony for the participants in this project, aiming at preparing the Kuwaiti youth to work in the industrial sector. The event was organized by Kuwait Industries Union and was attended by many figures in that field. Our correspondent Heba Abdurrahman has more details in the following report.
Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Trade and Industry and Acting Minister of Education and Higher Education, Dr. Abdul Mohsen Al-Milaj, said that the government aims at increasing the contribution of the manufacturing sector in GDP to 17% annually in accordance with the development plan for the state. The minister's speech came on the occasion of the completion of the national project Makers of the Future, fired by the Federation of Industries of Kuwait to train the national youth to work in the industrial sector. He added that this project is a positive step in addressing the negative aspects of the current situation and recorded by the development plan for the years from 2015 to 2020. The ceremony was attended also by Minister of Social Affairs and Labour and Minister of State for Planning and Development Affairs, Hind Al-Subih, and the Chairman of Kuwait Industries Union, Hussein Al-Khrafi.
I have the pleasure today to attend the ceremony for 20 Kuwaiti girls and boys attend and join the industrial sector. This was through the Future Industrial Project joined between MGRB, which is Manpower Program, and the Industrial Union, and also the private sector, which is the several industrial in several sectors. I find actually all the job seekers was happy, so because they have a very good training in very variety subject, and also the owner of that industries are happy with these colleagues. I hope that we see in the next future many programs from that. This is actually the real development when we find the three area are working together to have this success.
We are celebrating today the honored under the new Union of the Industrial Kuwaitis in accordance with the MGRB for the project of the future planning. We are graduated many Kuwaiti fresh graduate students, and they are well trained and prepared to be working in the private sector as the industrial sector specifically. Those training period was as 9 months, and at the beginning we have some difficulties, but hopefully in the accordance with the two parties we hopefully manage to succeed, and we are here today to celebrate this success between the two parties.
The ratio of the contribution of the manufacturing sector of the GDP amounted to about 6.5% during the period 2009 to 2012, with the new development plan aims at 17% per annum to be an important tributary and a source of increased national income. The closing ceremony of the Future Makers project came after 9 months of training, lectures and workshop sessions organized by the Kuwaiti Industries Union for the trainees, for the Kuwaiti youth in order to find their suitable work field. From the Kuwait Chamber for Commerce and Industry, or the KCCI, this is Heba Abdurrahman reporting for English News.
This is the end of tonight's main news. For a chance to see our reports again, please visit our YouTube channel at MOI Kuwait News. The headlines for tonight. His Highness the Emir Sheikh Sabah Al Ahmed Al Jaber Al Sabah returns to the homeland after a private visit to Morocco. His Highness the Emir Sheikh Sabah Al Ahmed Al Jaber Al Sabah addresses the nation. U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry arrives in Turkey to build support for action against the IS militants in Syria and Iraq. New EU sanctions against Russia over its role in Ukraine go into force, with similar sanctions expected from the U.S.